Welcome to our first video on what is grief and grieving. So, grief is a normal reaction that we have to any significant loss that causes some distress or sorrow. The sorts of things that might trigger that grieving process could be anything from the loss of a loved one to the loss of a relationship, the loss of a pet, the inability to reach an important goal we have in our life, the loss of our career or employment, the loss of our country, our culture. It can also be the loss of the life as you've known it as a result of some traumatic event. What is the purpose of grieving? Well, firstly, it's about making sense of the loss, whatever that loss is. And then secondly, it's about being able to live a satisfying life without that loss being a dominant factor in your life. So how do we do it? How do we grieve? Grief is a very personal thing, and there's no time frame on it. Everyone grieves in their own way, and it can be very much affected by the circumstances of the loss. For example, if you lose someone close to you who, as a result of a car accident, that's very different from losing someone close to you as a result of suicide, or losing someone who has had an extended illness where you've known that the end is coming. So all of those factors will affect how people grieve. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talked about 5 stages of grief. And those stages she defined as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. Initially, she thought that those stages were linear and that people sort of moved through one stage onto the next until it was all done. As time went on, she revised her idea and thought, well, no, it's not linear. People work on something and they move on to the next stage, but at some point they may need to come back to an earlier stage to complete the tasks. Another worker in the field called William Warden, came at it from a slightly different angle, and he talks about the tasks of mourning. And those tasks, and there are 4 that he defined, was firstly accepting the reality of the loss. Secondly, it's about working through the pain of that grief and loss. Thirdly, adjusting to an environment where that loss is, in fact, not there. The person is no longer with you. And finally, finding an enduring connection with the loss or the person who's no longer there, while being able to embark on a new life, as it were, moving forward. Now, in the next video, we will actually talk about those things in more detail as we talk about the sorts of support needs that people have at those different stages. But now let's talk about normal grief, what people consider Well, people often ask the question, is this normal? Well, I don't think there's such a thing as normal grief, but when we talk about that, we usually mean that people have a sense of moving forward, that they're experiencing a whole range of different emotions that could range from shock, anger, confusion, emptiness, guilt, anxiety, even positivity, loneliness. A wide range of emotions. People are experiencing those, but still having a sense of moving forward. When we talk about grief not being normal, then it's when people feel stuck, when they don't have a sense of moving forward. And sometimes we refer to that as complicated grief. There are some warning signs for those of us who are dealing with people who are experiencing grief. There are some signs to look for that are signs of concern. Right? For example, if someone continually denies their feelings about the loss, or is unable to talk about the loss, or finds it really difficult to cry, who goes through periods of prolonged sadness. Sometimes people's behaviour changes and they act out of character. Sometimes people excessively self-medicate, often with alcohol. And sometimes people avoid dealing with the loss by focusing all their attention on work or other activities. And then sometimes people get really down and may experience suicidal thoughts. Now, if you notice any of these signs in people that you know, or indeed if talking about these issues has raised anything for you personally, then it's important to take some action. Talk to a doctor or your counsellor, or you can call Griefline on 1300 845 745. Next time we'll explore the support needs that people have as they move through the various stages of grief and how you can best provide that support.